Mr. Governor's team's agenda was very clear and explicit. When you go to the center of it, you have the education and technology pillar. We came in 2019, we set a KPI based on the information we have, based on the data at hand. We have 3 institutions that were not performing at the optimum. 2 of them, colleges of education, Adeniran College of Education, Janiki, and then the Michael College of Primary Education in Nepal. Student enrollment dwindling through the years. As of December last year, combined enrollment for both was less than 5,000. Meanwhile, the subvention the government gives them monthly, if you combine both in a year, goes about 5.5 billion. So the cost of training a graduate to have NCE certificates is about 600,000 per student. And what is the worth of the NCE certificate itself? Now, if you now juxtapose this per year to train one graduate. Now, if you now juxtapose this with the policy of the UTME, it is clear that there is a major problem. The best students are assigned to universities. Second best are assigned to the polytechnics. And the worst of them are meant to go to the college of education to go and become teachers. Based on that, also based on the data of what we have from JAM and Population Commission as at 2006, when they had the last census, they gave Lagos 9 million citizens as our population. As at 2016, the number of applicants that wrote JAM from Lagos were about 1.7 million. How many of them were able to gain admission? About one maybe less than 3% of that number. LASU, as at 2016, had 180,000 apply. LASU could only admit 5,000. So, with these numbers, it is apparent that we have a ticking time bomb at hand and we must address it frontally. Secondly, over time, the government has set up policies, made regulations that you should stop discriminating against HND holders in the labor market. I'll give you a classic example. You come to public service with HND. Your ceiling is level 14, except you choose to do a conversion that you spend 2 years, 6 semesters. That will enable you now open the gates to advance in your career in public service. And as a state, we've done recruitment for teachers back to back in the past 2 years. I'm not sure TESCOM will ever employ you if you come with NCE. You must have a B.Ed. If you have NCE, you must have a higher certificate to go with it. Shows the times have changed. And the numbers are not looking good. So consequently, we had to draft the law, approach the House of Assembly. And thankfully, Mr. Governor insisted that, look, we can't drop the ball. Let us convey this to the Assembly. Let us convince them. And I'm glad the Right Honorable Speaker and members of the House agreed with us as executive. And they moved it forward and they passed the law. They are not relevant. But they are no more relevant. Let us call a spade a spade. The discrimination against NCE is too much. Okay, why did the British, from where we inherited our education structure, scrap polytechnic some years back, 30 years back or more? It's just they have seen this ahead of time. NCE is even worse. We're recruiting people for our secondary schools in Lagos, and we're asking for a benchmark of B.Ed. You must have a bachelor's degree in education, or a postgraduate degree, diploma in education. You must tie something to education, but not NCE. So it's unfortunate, but the realities of our time is the 21st century is gone beyond NCE holders. And there's a report that says by 2020, 83% of the jobs that will be available will be for degree holders. The engagement is still ongoing. But before we go to this bridge, we engage them to the extent that we say, look, If you are ready and willing, you must be ready to be adaptable to life situations. Everybody does have fears. Fears of what happens to my job? Can I exist in a new structure? I'm a chief lecturer here. By the way, a chief lecturer earns more than a professor in a university. I found that out in the course of this transmutation. And we have said to them, they will just reclassify you. Once they reclassify you, nobody will take off your money, no. But they must be ready to be adaptable to this wheel of progress. We have assured them there won't be job loss, except it's expedient that there's nothing we can do about it. And for that may happen where you have to merge the two colleges. If, for instance, you have a faculty where you have excess, if you can't adapt to go to somewhere else within the system, they may have to tell you to go and they'll pay you. But we want to make it as seamless as possible and as painless as possible. This governor, in the past 2 years, has ramped up infrastructure deficits, trying to bridge the gap in LASU. You can go and find out there's a contractor mobilized to sites to give them a befitting world-class faculty of education. Education is usually the biggest of the faculties, so they are building them one now. And then, before the end of last year, they also mobilized to have a world-class tech hub. It will be multifaceted and multidisciplinary, so that you can have space there. He spoke about LASU. I know this governor, he came in 2019, he increased their subvention across board, gave them bailout. One or two of them, with due respect, are owing pension funds. Who diverted? And I said, you can't ask for a bailout without telling me who touched the funds. We can't do things the same way and expect a different result. When you have infrastructure deficit, you don't bridge it overnight. You have to be very deliberate in your approach to bridge it. He's done that for LASU. He also made sure they completed the student arcade that was on for about 13 years. The library infrastructure is done. He's told the Chinese, go back and complete it. The same way he did for their Senate building. If there is a drop of the ball, government is a continuum. And what this governor has said 2.5 years, no, let us bridge the gap. For our coin, you can go there and verify this. The contractor is back to site to complete the admin building that was abandoned. We do the same thing for them in Mokoped. We are not giving them a befitting one for the University of Science and Tech, Ikorodu, admin building. Now, why are we doing all this? We are anticipating this transmission or transmutation to be seamless. And in the face of dealing economic fortunes, give it to this governor. From primary, where you have a co-excel, to secondary, now to tertiary. What is just done is, let me be deliberate in my approach. Yes, we agree, there's a deficit. For instance, in secondary schools, in public schools, across the state, over 1,000 plus had been touched one way or the other since he assumed office in May 2019. And he's not even stopping at that. He's taking up responsibilities that usually belong to SUBEB. For me, if I have my way, I can say, okay, don't just start giving them grants. Maybe 10 years is too wide, a window. Okay, maybe for the first 2.5 years, to be sure that they can even sustain themselves as universities. Take, for instance, we are setting up 2 new universities as a state. The 2 new universities we are setting up as a state, I can give you the numbers off cuff, because we know our numbers. As IGR, how much they generate, we can speak to that now because we have a centralized control system. And from subvention, we know how much we give each of them. What I think we should start rethinking is this policy of you must be a professor to be a VC. That, for me, is a puzzling one. Why can't you be an administrator? You want to go and administer a school? A VC, a professor can come and be a DVC to serve the purposes of the act that a DVC card must head the Senate. Oh, yes, that's a meeting point for professors. But so at the university, if you have the capacity, why must you be a professor?